Watch?
Yeah, no. It'll be on my Facebook page. It'll be on the Facebook page.
Great.
No. All right, you ready?
All right.
All right. Well, welcome to People Power Hour. Again, my name's Terrell McKinney. I'm running for the state legislature in District 11, which is primarily North Omaha here in Nebraska. We got a special guest tonight, one of my bros, somebody I could call and get some great advice from anytime. Anthony Rogers-Wright, who does a lot of climate and racial justice advocacy across the country. How you doing, bro?
Doing well tonight. It's really great to be here, Terrell. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, no problem, man. For those who don't know you, can you give a brief introduction of yourself?
Sure. I work for, and I'm here in my own capacity, but I work for a national organization called the Climate Justice Alliance. And we represent over 70 frontline environmental justice grassroots organizations from across the country, including Indian country and the U.S. colonies of Guam and Puerto Rico. And our work is rooted in climate justice via just transition, energy democracy, and food sovereignty, obviously racial and gender and economic justice as well. And a lot of the work we've been doing recently has been on, Green New Deal work and making sure that all Green New Deal work is operated and articulated through a lens of climate justice to make sure that, communities that have been are being impacted right now, first and worst, as we like to say, by the climate crisis due to decades of environmental racism and obviously centuries of white supremacy and colonization and patriarchy. So, there's no day that's the same, but it's never ever a dull day. But it's righteous work, and it's just an honor to work with some of the best thinkers and best organizers in the country, if not the world. And making sure that we uplift these communities and the people and the workers who live in them.
What got you into climate justice work?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of growing up in Brooklyn, New York, as well as Harlem, and then eventually Washington Heights before I left New York City. But growing up in these environmental justice communities and seeing Black, Brown, Indigenous, and even poor white people suffering from the impacts of being situated so close to toxic pollution and toxic air emissions. Harlem is an environmental justice community. Young people, I mean, there are people, young kids who were born with asthma because the air quality was so bad. And I think that it was just a call, to give back and to make sure that these communities are no longer treated as sacrifice zones. And I think it always piqued my interest. It was everything that I've always wanted to do with regards to racial justice and really confronting white supremacy. And now that we're in the midst of this quintessential climate crisis, where combined, as we'll get into more, with a global pandemic that is taking out Black, Brown, and Indigenous people disproportionately. Time is critical right now to get very, very serious about this issue. So I think the timing was right. It's definitely a privilege to for a living, do something that you love. So, I never take that for granted.
When you speak of climate justice, I think it's a it's terms that aren't necessarily used as much as they probably should in Black and Brown communities. Can you speak to why that is and why it's important that we do start speaking up about climate and environmental justice in our communities?
Absolutely. I mean, First and foremost, it's just another example of how the education system, the public education system especially, has failed our communities. We come from, I mean, even right here in Omaha, North Omaha, the tradition of it is rooted in the Black radical tradition, you know, especially as it pertains to the legendary Ernie Chambers, whose seat, of course, you're running to fill. This has just not been shared over the years. And as a result of that, there's sort of been like a loss of that institutional knowledge. The term environmental racism was coined by a black man named Dr. Benjamin Chavis, who released a report in 1987 called Toxic Waste and Race. I mean, even before that, I mean, a lot of people don't even realize that the day that the radical Martin Luther King was assassinated, you know, he was in Memphis to speak on behalf of sanitation workers and black sanitation workers who were given more dirty routes and exposed to more pollution. So this has always been a part of our tradition of black liberation, of civil rights. It hasn't been readily passed down. But I will say that more and more communities are hip to this idea. You know, not just the 70 organizations that we work with at Climate Justice Alliance, but you know, even in the environmental world. And I think that everything that's happened this summer has also uplifted the issue, where we say that if you really want to act on climate change, you can't do it without coming from a lens of racial justice. So that's a good thing, and I think that here in Omaha, you know, through leaders like yourself, we're going to start educating our people more and getting them more mobilized about this issue because you know, as the weather gets colder, as they're exposed to more toxic air with this pandemic, we're really going to have to be in formation so that we take care of each other and make sure that more of us don't succumb to the pandemic and more of us don't succumb to the toxic pollution that we're already exposed to.
When you talk about the toxic pollution and climate justice, what are maybe a top two or top three, primary issues that are facing individuals that live in North Omaha right now?
Absolutely. I mean, first and foremost, it's the coal-fired power plant, the OPPD coal-fired power plant. You know, the NAACP, under the leadership of an amazing woman named Jackie Patterson, who NAACP literally hired specifically for climate change and to fight environmental racism. The North Omaha coal-fired power plant, according to them, out of 338 coal-fired power plants throughout the country, is the 17th most dirty one in the country. The report is called Cold Blooded, and it showcases how people of color, specifically Black and Indigenous people, are situated nearer to these types of facilities than white, Asian, and even Latino, Hispanic counterparts. That's one first and foremost. Secondly, is just the overall segregation. Omaha, of course, is one of the most, and some say the most segregated city in the country. And when you segregate people and put a certain people in a specific area that doesn't get funding, that also is situated near this coal-fired power plant, that also increases and exacerbates all other types of inequalities associated essentially with dehumanization. So there's massive blight, as we know, in North Omaha as well. And you know, exposure to freeways and whatnot. But I would say that first and foremost, that coal-fired power plant, the lack of investment that's controlled by the community, and the blight, you know, just that all of that contributes to the overall systemic racism and institutional racism that North Omaha has been experiencing for just far too long. And then you know, as you said, you talked about education, schools, and whatnot. The quality of schools, the quality of education. Young people should be getting educated on the state of the environment so that they can get into the fight. There's stuff for all of us to be able to do to make our communities better. But then overall, what I would also say is that there's this specter of eco gentrification, as some people call it. Some people call them contemporary missionaries, who are just sort of like waiting to flip North Omaha to make a profit, and despite the fact that that will displace, you know, thousands of families, primarily Black families.
Right. What a Because for me, like I admit I'm like within a meeting you and within my years of just being an organizer, I've been getting more and more educated on climate justice. How can others, start to get educated on the topic and learn more?
Yeah. I mean, first and foremost, what I would say is that, people need to understand, and it's a good thing that there are Black, Brown, and Indigenous leaders in this fight. So there are organizations who you can check out nationally, like Climate Justice Alliance. There are, national organizations like the Indigenous Environmental Network, that really have a lot of materials on, and resources to get people. We call them popular education resources in just transition, energy democracy, and food sovereignty, so that people can see and learn more what they can take from that and bring back to North Omaha, and Nebraska, writ large. And you do have people in the state who are doing incredible work in that. We have a mutual friend in Graham Christensen, who of course with GC Resolve and Regenerate Nebraska is always like thinking about ways that we can get rid of like fossil fuel pipelines and create rural urban pipelines, so that we're controlling our food systems, because that has a massive implications for climate action, the way we produce food, the way we distribute food, and who gets access to that food as well. So there's lots and lots of resources out there, because this is a quintessential issue, and it's really impacting young people as well, who understand that they can't like wait for a mantle to get passed to them or a torch to get passed to them. You see groups like the Sunrise Movement, as well as plenty of Black and Brown and Indigenous youth movements as well. Standing Rock, in South Dakota, like was led by Indigenous youth. It was an intergenerational fight. So, and there's incredible Indigenous wisdom that's always been here in Nebraska. The Winnebago, the Ponca, and the Omaha may not have been using, the words like climate change and climate justice specifically, but the work and the wisdom that they do, and being in right relationship with Mother Earth and the land, is absolutely rooted in the tenets of environmental and climate justice.
Right. This past, I mean, this whole year has been a mess, but this past couple weeks have been definitely tough on our community. We had the James Gerlach announcement, and then Gardner killed himself, and then we had the announcement yesterday with the Brianna situation. How have you dealt with that? I know you went up to Minnesota. First, could you
Yeah.
speak about that, about your experience going up there?
Yeah, I mean, I will say that. I mean, this is a perfect example. All right, this all goes back. The idea that like North Omaha would be, the area that it, would where the power plant is located, the blight, the lack of opportunity, something that's been known in the city for years and years and years. It is totally connected to everything that happened to the murder of Brother Skurlock, and the assassination of Breonna Taylor, the lynching of George Floyd. We say that the root causes of the climate crisis are white supremacy, patriarchy, and colonization, and all that ties into dehumanization. So it's not just the fact that we can be killed with so much impunity. It's also that we can't even get justice, and that is a function of that writ large. Since the 13th Amendment was signed and ratified into the Constitution, at that moment, Black people, descendants of Africans, went from being the most the biggest commodity, right? The wealthiest commodity, the most valued commodity in this country, to nothing. And when
Mhm.
that happened, dehumanization like was increased, actually, right? The freeing of the slaves actually increased dehumanization. We were already dehumanized and thought of as property, but when we couldn't be property traded like cattle anymore, we became even more dehumanized, and that all contributes to everything that we've been seeing this summer regarding the wanton taking and theft, and extermination of Black life. Now, in terms of going up to Minneapolis, I mean, it was so close, right? Like I normally live in Seattle. I've been here since January to escape COVID there, but it was just necessary. I felt a calling, and some indigenous folk who I did work with during Standing Rock, who have a resistance camp up in Minnesota, were like, "Yo, we're going down to Minneapolis to stand with Black people, as Black people stood with us during the Dakota Access Pipeline fight. Come on out. We got a safe house, and let's bear witness and show up, for this just very imperative issue." And it was very cathartic. I mean, some things went down as well, but it's just very, very important. Not just to show up, but also how we show up is extremely important. So I mean, at this time we've seen a lot of great white folk in the streets with us and whatnot. And that's extremely appreciative, and it's extremely necessary, right? I mean, everyone from Audre Lorde and Ella Baker and Ida B. Wells and the Combahee River Collective and James Baldwin have been delivering this message, from where before you and I were even born, Terrell, of that, like, this is about the liberation of all oppressed people. We just happen to know for a fact that in order for that to happen, we have to uplift the most marginalized caste in this country, and for for just generations that has been indigenous women and black women. So for me, it's all linked to the work. It's all linked to the work of climate justice. You cannot have action on climate if it's not rooted from a lens of racial justice. And probably the reason why we haven't had as much success as we can is because the environmental guild for far too long has been led and dominated by majority white groups, whether it's Sierra Club or League of Conservation Voters, and whatnot, that still have a very Anglo-centric lens. And even this summer, it was challenging to really get them to understand, and their memberships to understand, that you cannot bifurcate action on climate and racial justice. So like a lot of people like to say that we have like 8 years to really act on the climate crisis before it gets out of control. And my retort to that is, if we have 8 years to act on climate change, then we have 4 years to eviscerate white supremacy.
Right. And for me, this whole time and everything, it's been tough because I'm a candidate, and I've tried to stay committed to being as present as possible, showing up to places and just being there. I don't need to speak or be at the forefront and everything, but just showing my presence and showing that I'm with the fight and I'm with the people. But a huge part of me is like, I would like to be, honestly, at my core, I would like to be in the streets a lot more. But being a candidate, I can't always do that, and so it's tough. How do you What do you say to the young individuals that's just now getting involved over these past 4 or 5 months, and encourage them to keep the fight going? Because when you see situations like Brianna and James, it could get discouraging. It's like, okay, we did all this, protesting, and we did all this. What was it for?
Yeah, I mean, we might as well like get to like the big announcement, that I'm so happy to make during this session with you. But I mean, like I think that you embody a lot, Terrell, of what young folk who want to get into this fight need to do, because like there's an element of it that definitely has to be in the streets. That's extremely real. But there's also a political analysis that you have to have as well, and there's study that you have to do, and discipline that you have to have. So when I see a young brother like you, who is, one of the first conversations we have is like breaking down El Haj Malik's, landmark speech on the ballot or the bullet, that like, warms my heart, because it's just like, all right, this brother has a political analysis, your hunger for knowledge and wisdom that you can utilize, because yeah, we have to take the streets, and we have to put pressure on the people who are in power, and then we have to have a mechanism in place as well to hold them accountable if they're not, if they're not serving the people, and that requires having a political analysis. So one of my good favorite authors and good friend, Jane McCapley, has a book, for instance, called No Shortcuts, organizing for power. And it can't just be signs and megaphones all the time. I mean, that's really, really important, but that one is not organizing. That's like maybe more like mobilizing. Organizing is all about building power for the long term, to shift things from where they are to where we want them to be. So to the young folk, it's like, yeah, you're feeling that rage. Your black rage is beautiful. Your black rage is absolutely righteous. Hold on to that. And then, like, follow, the lead of our ancestors and our elders. I mean, Ella Baker, in my opinion, is the best peer organizer that the United States has ever seen, ever. But in addition to showing up in marches and rallies, she was also training people and getting trained herself. We love the Black Panther Party, and also keeping up that Black radical tradition, Black radical woman tradition, especially, producing people like Kathleen Cleaver, Sister Warrior #1, Angela Davis. But
Mhm.
like, part of the rules if you wanted to be in leadership in the Black Panther Party, was you were expected to read 2 hours a day to help shape your political analysis. So whether it is shutting down a coal-fired power plant or divesting and reinvesting police funds, there has to be a political analysis for how that's going to happen, because it's not just going to happen from being in the streets. The slight reforms that we've seen across the country, principally in cities like Minneapolis, New York, LA, San Francisco. Yes, it was like not necessarily done by voting, writ large, but like it was principled struggle in the street and having people in a position that were actually going to listen to the people. We don't necessarily have that situation in Omaha and not necessarily in Nebraska, which is why it's really, really important for young people like yourself to get into the political process, in a way that's accountable to the people. So to that end, that's why I'm really happy to announce that, as you know, I work for sit on a table called the Green New Deal National Action Fund, and it's a network that is really trying to push climate justice and racial justice policy at the local, state, and federal level. And when I told them about you, it was really, really easy, and we're so happy to announce right here that you have been endorsed by us, and that does come with an investment. And this table is sat at by a synergy of people who advised Senator Warren when she was running for president, and advised Bernie when he was running for president. Groups like the Working Families Party, Sierra Club, Indivisible, SEIU. So there's labor, there's climate groups, there's longstanding groups who agreed, that it was very, very important to continue the legacy of Ernie Chambers. And when we looked at the pool of candidates, it was like, Terrell, so congratulations. I couldn't be
Thank you,
happier
bro.
and prouder.
Thank you.
And yeah, and this is it, because I mean they've also seen your hustle, Terrell. Like they've seen how you've just been running this incredible grassroots campaign and doing the work. So again, protests, marches, really, really important. Keep doing that, y'all. But also you have to bolster that with an actual political analysis so that we're building power and moving power and reallocating power back into the hands of the people. That's why we endorse you, and that's why you're going to be getting the backing and email sent about you by organizations you may have not even heard of, who went to your Facebook page and saw all of this. So as Angela Davis says, freedom is a constant struggle. It's not going to be given to us. The oppressor is not just going to hand over power. So young folk, be safe, be strategic, and also create that wisdom and take it. Because as you were saying earlier, not knowing about the incredible Black radical tradition that has existed in this city is disheartening. And not knowing, like I like to say, is that the OPPD coal-fired power plant is killing more Black people than the OPD itself. So get educated, get mobilized, and build that power so that we can take this city back and give it back to the people.
And what you just said is why I decided to run. I was organizing, active, being an activist and doing whatever I could, but I also realized that I could either continue to knock on the door or try to put myself inside of the room to try to make that change. And I felt like, getting into the legislature was the best route to do so. I mean, there were other offices up, and there will be other offices up, but the ability to affect laws and statutes and things like that in our state is big. And I think that's where the change happens. And I agree, it's a marathon. It's definitely not an overnight thing. And I try to tell people that all this stuff that is affecting us didn't just take place overnight. It just didn't get established just right away. It was a process. It happened over time. So it's going to take some time to break these systems. It's not going to be a 5-year, 10-year thing. We got to go into it with a level head, saying it's going to be some disappointment along the road, but we got to stay the course, because if we don't, it's not going to happen.
No, I know you hit the nail on the head, and it's also about the bills and the policy is really important, but it's also the conversation that people, once you get elected, will be in a position to foster. I mean, we all know
and what's that? And Eric Williams, who's on the OPPD board, he said the coal will be gone in North Omaha by 2023. And thank you, Eric, for tuning in.
Yeah, well, yeah, no, I want to get to Eric because, Eric is a friend of ours.
Yep.
I think that in 2018, he clearly ran one of the best campaigns that I've ever seen.
He was
It was
everywhere.
grassroots, and that's why he won, right? I mean, because he showed up and he hustled, and
Yep.
we have some like the thing about it is that like this is also why it's important to have a political analysis. Eric and I aren't like 100% on like what we should do with that plant and how fast we should move it to like 100% renewable, but I know that I can always have a conversation with Eric, and Eric is always going to hear from the people. He makes himself available to the people, so like we don't have to agree 100% of the time, because we agree 90% of the time, and we'll
Yep.
work on that 90% instead of turning the 10% we don't agree on into 100%. Eric is a paragon of a public servant, which I know that you're going to be as well. Also, to the point of it, in addition to moving policy, Eric like helped foster some discussions on climate change from the perspective of OPPD, as you will do, once you become the next senator of LD11. And so it's not just about getting those bills passed, but like sometimes you just got to spark that discussion. We know about the composition of the unicameral. People who are Democrat and independent are vastly outnumbered, but we still need very brave people in there. Like, I mean, you see the work that Senator Hunt has done in her first term as a senator. In addition to getting things passed, just having the temerity and the valor to use terms like white supremacy and patriarchy has sparked that discussion. You have an outwardly bisexual like woman serving, that's sparking that discussion about the LGBTQIA community. So, and that builds power as well. Another thing that I'll mention, because this also has to do with racial and climate justice and the idea of dehumanization. You've got, good amendments like the amendment to get slavery out of the Constitution of Nebraska. That also might seem like symbolic, but it's very, very important, to spark that discussion, that overarching discussion that we started with, of like, this took time. This idea of white supremacy took time, and so it's going to take like all kinds of efforts, including introducing bills that may have no chance of passage, but are at least going to get people like talking about it and thinking deeper about it, such that we're building the foundation to actually make the transformations that we're looking to do.
Right, because some like people ask me like, you have a lot of great ideas, but how do you plan to get that stuff done when we got the governor that we got? And I was like, I don't care who the governor is, I'm gonna still push what I think is right for our communities. Whether he won't be there longer than me, so I'm gonna still push some legislation and try to make some changes. Just because you have somebody standing in the way doesn't mean you stop.
Right. I mean, imagine that attitude with some of the greatest organizers of all time who were in Birmingham and other Montgomery, Alabama. Of like, like, hey, the governor is George Wallace, so you might as well not do anything. I mean, we can't operate from a defeatist standpoint. We have to
Right.
operate from a standpoint of like what our vision is for what the world is going to look like, for what our community can and should look like, despite like who's in power, and remind the people that they're the ones who are actually in power, and your role, as a public servant, is to give them the tools to keep uplifting that power. And I mean, when you get elected, you'll hear from me if I this is something that you do that I'm like, yo, I got to talk to you,
Right.
and that's the type of relationship that we need to have. So. I know it can be daunting. I mean, there are a lot of threats hitting us at the same time, but like, what I'm not going to do is just like give up, just like you're not going to give up, just like Eric isn't going to give up either. Because what else are we going to do at this point? Like sometimes we're going to lose. When we lose, we work harder for the win.
And for me, it's like from what I come from and from what I've experienced over my life, just because we got somebody standing in the way, like I didn't overcame more than a racist white man. You know
That's
what I
right.
mean? So,
That's
and
right.
I'm a wrestler, so I'm always be confident in myself, and I think I could win no matter what.
That's absolutely right. That's absolutely, I mean, look, I think that in addition to our indigenous sisters and brothers, I mean, black people in this country embody the idea of perseverance and resilience,
Right.
and it's ironic, right? Because that same wisdom that the indigenous and black people hold in that perseverance and resilience is exactly the type of wisdom and approach that we're going to need to attack this climate crisis and this racial justice crisis.
What what are some? Oh, what do you think that? No, can we speak to the importance of this upcoming election, what it means to our community? I mean, it means a lot because we got a dude. We like it means a lot from the president level to the state level, honestly, because I say that because we had a DA that disregarded doing a full investigation, and a young black man didn't receive the justice that he deserved, and he's being criminalized, and he's the victim. So
Yeah,
I would say speak to the importance of this election and the importance of not just focusing just on the president, but actually focusing in on the local because that's what's hitting us first.
absolutely. So, I mean, what I'll say is that this is a generational election. Like the out, and we it's I know it's a cliche and like, oh, it's the most important election of your life. Um, it is in the sense in the sense that like we are in a state of fascism right now. You know, a good a person in my life, Paula Wilson, who like studied how fascism like arises, was like it's never some like fantastical thing that happens, then all of a sudden like you're in fascism. It just you wake up and here you are. So we
Right.
got an attorney general of the United States that's essentially a personal lawyer for the president of the United States, who literally has suggested that some protesters be charged with sedition, okay. Suggestions that there won't be a peaceful transfer of power if they don't like the outcome of the election. All the while we're hearing about women in ICE detention camps being having hysterectomies forced on them while their children are in cages. The denial of science, whether it's the pandemic, people being told to inject bleach and cleanser into them, you know, to fight a virus.
Right.
So I mean that's what we have going on at the federal level, and that obviously has to be a change. I mean you know me. I mean Joe Biden was not my first was not my first, second, or third choice, but here we are. What I will say is that like, and then after we get you elected, after we get Ernie elected to county commissioner, we have a very important election coming up in 2021 for city seats, city council, as you mentioned, Mr. Klein, who like, you know, if anyone is listening to this and like, you don't have to be extraordinary, by the way, to be the DA. You have to have a law degree, and you should run against him. You know, but these are the elections that are shape our everyday lives. That city council. You want that police defunded, divested from, and reinvested to? City council has the power to do that. Mayor has the power to do that. You want to make sure that $120 million of your money isn't used to build another facility to house to jail children and incarcerate children. You know, that's the county commissioner level. Like that, you know, this is where you can make some real changes. And then you know, we have the state level of like where we're actually writing legislation that is going to assist what you want to do at the local and the municipal level. And then at the same time, these state policies can influence federal policy. A few of the organizations that we work with in New York, for instance, introduced a piece of legislation at the state level of New York called the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act, the New York Renews Coalition. It got passed, and it is now the most influential piece of climate policy at the federal level. Influenced Joe Biden, who even in his climate platform said 40% of investments are going to go to environmental justice communities. That came out of legislation at the state level. So it cannot always be top down. I mean, yes, the president does have power. The U.S. House of Representatives, the U.S. Senate does have power. But you know, when you look at places like, you know, my hometown of like Seattle, when Trump won, you know, there was depression and there was shock. But there was this idea like we have socialists on our city council in Seattle. We have an incredible state legislature, and we have an attorney general that sued the president when he tried to institute an unconstitutional and illegal Muslim ban, right? And so you know you cannot just rest. And look, this time, you know, with this pandemic, so many people voting from home, you have an amazing opportunity to literally educate yourself while you are voting, right? So like while you're filling out your vote by mail ballot, go to Terrell's website, look at his platform, you know, go to Ernie's website, look at his platform, and do the same thing during citywide elections. So this can't not like the federal government alone is not going to save us.
I try to for the younger generation, and when I try to talk to them and in front of them, I just say like we have to take the energy from the protests and the rallies. We have to take that into dropping off the ballot if you're signing it at home and taking it to the polls on election day. Because without it, all this would be for nothing. Because until we get some of these people out of these seats and offices, it's going to be an uphill battle. I mean, it's not going to happen overnight, but we got to get some of them out.
Right. Look, I mean, what I would love to see from people who have been taking the streets, and the vast majority of them have been absolutely amazing, and is like, y'all come together and do a major march and rally where you are knocking on everybody's door and making sure that they voted. Like
Yeah,
that would be huge and powerful. Organize that. You know what I'm saying? Organize, like, we have allies in West Omaha. We've got allies in South Omaha. We got allies in North Omaha, in Midtown, downtown. Come together and be like, what is this going to look like? March, knock on everybody's door. Did you vote? All right, if you didn't vote, come with us right now. We'll take you to where you need to vote, because we can't just be organizing for Black death, right? We have to also organize for Black life as well. As Black lives matter, literally,
yeah,
right? Like, take that like to heart. And it can't just be a hashtag. It can't be a yard sign. It can't be something that you put in your window. Because we're already starting to see, unfortunately, mainly from white people, like their attitudes fleeting to where they were before George Floyd, right? And it's unfortunately looking like Black Lives Matter was a summer fling, for a lot of people. We can't have that. You said it. Like, you got to continue this energy, because if you see that smirk that Mayor Sothert gives to us all the time when we go to the meetings. She's not afraid of us. You know what I
hmm
mean? She's not afraid of us unleashing our power. That's my challenge to the organizers of young and in between of this city and of this community. Organize that, like a massive march and rally on election day, or more, multiple days leading up to election day, of a march and mobilize type of thing. March and mobilize the vote. There you go. You can have that one for free, and let's like that, like get people out there, because like you said, like, look, I don't vote shame. You know what I mean? I really don't vote shame, at least not at the federal level, but at the state and the local level, I absolutely do, because your vote absolutely does matter at the state and local level, because those are the changes that impact your life every single day.
I agree. I just, I don't like, I'm optimistic with this election as far as like, because so many people say like, oh, 2021 is going to come and everything's going to be back to normal, we're going to be okay. And I'm like, are you really that naive? And like, really, like, just because a year changes doesn't mean these problems just go away just overnight.
Right.
We have New
You
Year's
know,
Eve and COVID just leaves. And
right, right. Imagine indigenous people in 1492, right? We just got to make it to 1493, and everything's gonna be all
right,
right. You know, um, yeah. I mean, I think that, again, this is where we also have to be careful with how we use social media. You have used it incredibly, right? You have used it as basically an invitation to learn more, but not as a substitute for the organizing that needs to be done, like the face to face, the hustle, the in the streets, the door knocking, the phone calls, and all of that stuff. Because what happens is that, like, yes, 2020 has been an abomination. It's been absolutely terrible. But, like, you're not going to wake up on January 1st and 2021, and white supremacy, patriarchy is going to be gone, and we're going to be decolonized. If only it worked that way, that would be
right.
incredible. I would, like, love that. I would just be like playing with my 5-year-old, playing my bass guitar and tending to my garden, but that's just not how it works. As a matter of fact, we're going to have to work harder in 2021. If Biden wins, we are still going to have to apply pressure to that administration to come correct and to fulfill the pledges that they made. When
Right.
you win, we're gonna have to come together and make sure that the pledges that you made, are right. This, like, look, for those people, I don't use the term Americans. I say U.S. resident. But for those people who can vote, it's that the United States of America is advanced citizenship. It's advanced citizenship, and the moment that you, like, take that for granted, then it just gets taken away from you. right? I mean, whether it's the Voting Rights Act of 68 or 64 being totally eviscerated to the point where it doesn't even matter anymore. Even the Civil Rights Act, it's not going to be given to you. It's never going to, the oppressor is never going to give up that type of power. You know what Brother Frederick Douglass used to say, like, power never concedes anything without principled struggle. It never has, it never will. That's just, and that's like, axiomatic throughout history. So if you want it, you got to go get it. And this isn't like, the lecture, I'm not that old, you know what I'm saying? The lecture, like, you youngins, you got to go get, but it's really, really true. When take the day off on January 1st, get over your hangovers and whatnot, because we should party hard. You know what I mean? Like, and this is where I miss Prince. We need that remix. I'm going to party like it's 2020. You know what I mean? But
Right.
on January 2nd, get ready to go to work. We have incredible people who are running for mayor of this city. Get to learn who they are, because I know that, like, once you win, before, like, your session starts, you're gonna be like doing what you always do, out in the street, educating and mobilizing people and reminding them, like, yeah, I won, but that's not it. Like, actually, the work starts now.
And that's been my approach. I told people that I was present prior to even me saying I was going to run for office. So why would I change? And they also, after the primary, they're like, how are you going to overcome your opponent? And I'm like, it's me and him. I just got to put in the work. I know what I could do, and I know who I am, and I know the difference, and I know what I bring. So I have never focused on him, or like, I just was like, I'm gonna be Terrell, and if people gonna vote for me, they're gonna vote for me. But I'm gonna be myself, and I'm not gonna sell myself short just to get a vote.
Well, I mean, yo, brother, you have built an organic coalition of Black people, white people, Asian people, Latina people, because they know your body of work. I mean, like, I didn't even know who your opponent was. I mean, to be honest, like, I have, because I haven't seen, the work, and so, like, I mean, yeah, I'm subjective. I love you. I know you, whatnot. But even if I did, I'm talking like as a pure political operative. If I didn't know you and I was like, all right, like, I want to find out about who these two people are who are running for this. Like, it's just about the hustle. It's about the work. You know what I mean? When I see that, it's like, yo, if he's gonna work this hard really to be a public servant, then probably, he's gonna work hard to serve me, rather than just thinking like I can run on name recognition or what I've done in the past or who I know and whatnot, and I can sit back like that. That's not going to cut it anymore. And people should know that this year we have seen incredible races from people who apparently had no chance. Whether it was Jamal Bowman in the
Yeah.
Bronx, a middle school principal teacher who knocked off Elliot Engel, who had been in Congress for 32 years. The great sister Cori Bush, gangster in Missouri. Just like Black Lives Matter activist, like a real Black Lives Matter activist, because she studies, taking out a problematic Black candidate. You saw what Charles Booker almost did in Kentucky against Amy McGrath in the primary. So if you're running on your laurels and you're not running on your work and your hustle, people will see that they can, like, I think that what 2020 has really done for the vast majority of us, but not enough of us, is that, like, it's proven that, like, we're not stupid and we're not going to fall, as Nina Turner says, for the okie doke.
Right. And then when you speak of the coalition, like, my thing is Terrell McKinney for the people. And one thing I got a few times is people felt like, saying all power to the people or saying I'm for the people is too pro black. And I'm like, do you not understand what for the people means? Like, yes, I'm a black man. Yes, I'm gonna fight as much as I can for the black community, but that doesn't mean I'm gonna alienate others. There's other people that are oppressed in society. Like, I'm against all forms of oppression. I don't care who
That's
you
right.
are. If
Look,
you're being oppressed,
Black
I'm with
Lives
you.
Matter. Right, Black Lives Matter is not about supremacy. It's about equity, right?
Right.
It's almost ridiculous that it's almost like we have to remind you that we're humans, and that's where that hashtag comes from. It's like, and we're talking about all Black lives, trans Black lives, LGBTQIA Black lives, disabled Black lives. Every single Black life is valuable, beautiful, and matters. And again, look at your coalition. I mean, like, even one of the greatest sons of Nebraska, Haj Malika Shabazz, when he got back from Mecca, he was very pro-black. He was openly black, and he still loved black people. But he was like, "Yo, I'm going to work with white people, as well." It's just a matter of like what that working relationship looks like, and making sure that the people who benefit from oppression don't center themselves for the people who are fighting to stop being oppressed. And we know what that looks like, and we can work together for what that looks like. You're going to be that kind of lawmaker. You're not going to not work with Megan Hunt because she's white. You're not going to not work with Michaela Kavanaugh because she's
Right.
white. That's absolutely like ridiculous. And the people who you don't work with who are white, it's not going to be because they're white. It's going to be because they have crappy policies and a crappy approach to what democracy, freedom, and liberation looks like. And we'll be right behind you to confront those senators as well. So. Yeah, I really think that there's been a legacy of when Black, Brown, Indigenous, and oppressed people have stood up for themselves, had the temerity to just basically be like, we're humans and we're not going to allow you to treat us any other way. It gets sometimes flipped as divisive. It gets flipped as not helpful, right? It gets flipped as all lives matter. And it's just like, look at the people who are normally pushing that, though, right?
Right.
Like they're not with us. So it's, yeah.
And then I don't know. I say like when I look around North Omaha because I grew up here, and I haven't seen much change, if any. Like we got a Walmart, but let's be like I'm speaking of like real change that you know people aren't. We're still number one in poverty right now. We got the lowest median income. Graduation rates are horrible. College graduation rates are horrible. Like those are the things I want to change or do whatever I can to you know, move the needle in some type of way. Like what worked in the 80s and the 90s is not going to work in 2021. If you
No,
if
sir.
you if you're using those strategies, you're not going to be effective. It's going to take somebody that understands the what's going on in the community, somebody that has a connection to the community, somebody that's willing to listen and sit down with the community.
Well, I mean, you have built that, like, that's why I was like, you are building a legacy, of your own, right? I mean, like, we all know about like the legendary Ernie Chambers. You're not trying to be him. You're trying to take what you have learned from him and apply it to the 21st century as Terrell McKinney. That's like my
Right.
favorite thing about you. You like, don't rest on the laurels. Like Ernie endorsed you. I mean, that's incredible, But it's not like, okay, Ernie endorsed me, I'm done. Yes, we cannot apply 20th century solutions to 21st century challenges. The fear, as you were saying, not seeing things change in North Omaha. The only things that I'm noticing is these preludes to gentrification, which is another form of colonization. And so
Yep.
when we are making these changes, it's got to be controlled by the community. I've seen it, brother, in Harlem. I've seen it in Philadelphia, in ATL, Oakland, Inglewood, out west, Seattle, that people are just waiting to prey on a beautiful community like North Omaha, close to the airport, close to downtown. You know what I'm saying? Like close to the water and whatnot. Whose mouths are salivating to get in there, raise tax rates on assessed properties, so that people can't afford to pay the property taxes anymore. They either get foreclosed on, or they sell it, to a developer. That is a form of environmental racism as well, because when you treat people in a community like they're pollutants,
Yep.
right, and to get them out of there, that is environmental racism. And I know that you are running that platform. Brother Ernie is running on that platform as well, and that's something that a lot of people have to realize, how you're contributing to it and what you're going to do to stop it. And that's exactly why, like, we have incredible white allies like our good brother like Riley Wilson, who always shows up
Yep.
and is ready to
Definitely.
stand with us, because he sees what's going on. My good brother Thaddeus Monroe, who's down studying in Jackson State right now. Horrible dresser, horrible dresser. But his mind, he knows what's up. He knows what
Yep.
colonization looks like and whatnot. And so, and we're gonna need those folks, because like that's my big fear. I'm not from here, but I've been organizing and doing work in Nebraska and Omaha for the last 5 years. I've fallen in love with that community. I love, and I see that, like, there's so much potential. You see what Miss Diamond does at Emery's. You know what I mean? So that is a righteous business, a Black woman owned business. That makes good food. You might have to wait a while before you get served, but I still love you, Miss Diamond. You just gotta bring a book. when you order from this diamond. But we can do that, and we can get the investment in a way that we're controlling that, right? And that it's like based on our vision. But because if North Omaha gets gentrified, that's just going to be a travesty, and honestly like a crime against Black humanity.
Definitely. And when I speak of economics, it's like I don't want to get into the legislature and figure out ways to recruit big firms to come into the district. I want to empower those businesses that are already here that I know just need the capital and the resources to grow, so residents don't have to drive to West Omaha to get a job. They can work where they live.
Okay.
And that's the biggest thing. It's like there's so much potential when you look at the abandoned lots or the old buildings that's just been sitting there for years. It's like, why can't we figure out a way to repurpose them and repurpose those lots
Well,
and make the community better?
I mean, it again, root causes: white supremacy, patriarchy, and colonization. And here's the thing about how ridiculous and feckless the idea of white supremacy. And I always like put supremacy in quotation marks. Brother, a report just came out today, Terrell, that the cost of racism has the U.S. economy lost $16 trillion because of racism. So it doesn't even make any economic sense to be
No.
racist, and still it persists. And that is the intransigence of white supremacy. That is the intransigence of sexism and patriarchy. But discrimination again, and this is discrimination against African Americans, just Black Africans, not like the discrimination against Latinx, Asian, and indigenous and other marginalized populations. But $16 trillion. The U.S. GDP last year totaled $19.5 trillion. So, I mean, everything that you're saying is what our elders have been saying, from the get go, is that the truth. James Baldwin once said, "The truth that sets Black people free will also set white people free." And then he said, "But white people have just had a hard time, swallowing that truth." I think that your campaign has shown that your truth is available to everyone that really just understands that the best way that the best weapon against oppression is a full service justice platform, which is exactly what you're running on.
Yeah, definitely. Before we get out of here, can you tell the viewers how they could get in contact with you if they want to connect with you and learn more?
Well, I mean, please go to the climatejusticealliance.org. That's our website. I mean, I would rather people get in touch with you, honestly, because that's all I'm going to talk about. I really do want to encourage people to donate to your campaign. We will be sending an email out with the Green New Deal National Action Fund Network on your behalf. So, people should look out for that on your website, on your social media, and whatnot. But not, I mean, I'll find you. I have a pretty big mouth, and I have a proclivity for getting myself into trouble with it. But no, this is about you. This is your time. This is the time for LD11 in our community, and this is the time for the people. So I would say, go to everything that Terrell has going on, and we're going to be out there, putting boots on the ground in a safe way, social distancing, finding new and innovative ways to canvas for you, because we got Miss Shirley, also getting into the mix and whatnot, who is the bionic canvasser and whatnot. So that's the most important thing to me. Yeah.
Yep. And if you apply for a ballot, I believe they'll start sending those out on the 28th, which is Monday. You could send it back by the mail, or you could drop it off at the Washington branch library off of 30th. I know, so I talked to some people on the phone who don't feel comfortable with the mail because of what the president said. So just drop it off at in the ballot box right there at the library, and you don't got to worry about it.
No, I agree with that 100%, brother. I mean, we cannot leave anything to chance. We don't know what's going on with this United States Postal Service. But that being said, I know you brother Terrell, once you get to this unicameral, you're going to make sure that we support our postal workers who are just absolutely incredible, absolutely incredible. But yeah, the best way we can support them is not to leave anything to chance, y'all. I mean, go use those drop-off spots if you can. I don't know if it's legal for other people to drop off your ballots for you, Terrell. I don't know if that's all right, but if you need help with that, like, community, come together. This is what I'm talking about. Like, do marches for that, marches to make sure that we have mutual aid. Go visit Miss Jackson, go visit Miss Shirley, and be like, yo, if you don't want to use the mail, I can give you a ride to drop off your ballot and stuff like that. That's the type of mobilizing and organizing that we need right now. Not just like showing up and making noise. Not to say that that's like bad, but like, what are you doing with those people that you mobilize? We need mutual aid right now if we're going to move this together so that we get more candidates like you.
Definitely. And if you haven't, visit our website, peopleforterrellmckinney.com. Make sure you follow our Facebook page, Terrell McKinney LD11. We provide updates every day. If you ever got a question, feel free to reach out to me. I'll be happy to answer it. And I thank you all for tuning in. I thank you, brother Anthony, for coming.
Always.
And I really appreciate that endorsement. And definitely, I appreciate it.
All right, brother. I'll talk to you soon. I'll see you in the streets.
All right, bro.
All right, peace.